Hi, thanks for joining me. This is Zoe Tant, the Tantalising Stamper. I'm sharing this card with you today, which I put on my blog and Facebook, and it was very well received, I'm glad to say, and a lot of people have asked me how I made it, so I thought I would share a quick video to give you some tips. It's using the beautiful Dandelion Wishes stamp set from Stampin' Up, and I'm using this stamp today. So first of all, you need to stamp your image in black stays on ink, and I'm using watercolour paper, which I've cut at 3 7/8 by 3 7/8 square. Okay, so once you've stamped that in stays on and you've cleaned your stamp really well, then you can do the next stage, which is to stamp it again using Versamark, but not the whole image. What you need to do is, if you take your Versamark pad and turn it upside down and just add little bits of Versamark to the seed heads. Now if you've got a Versamark pen, then obviously that would probably be a little bit easier, but if you don't, then your pad works just as well. And this is it's a delicate flower head, but it's not precise. It's something that's lovely and free, and they're all similar but very different. So I don't think it really matters if you get little bits that you might not want or little bits that you would have liked but didn't. You can then take it round the stem here. If you've got it on there, then use your finger to take it a rub it off, and try and get the flower heads and not too much of the stems. Just add in the ink. You want a good bit of ink though, because you want it to certainly pick up the powder when you stamp it, so that it really pops when you then add the colour. So, and again, don't stamp it directly on. If you stamp it off a little bit. I think I've gone a little bit higher than the actual image. And then take some clear embossing powder, because that is then going to allow the white of the paper to just shine through and create that fluffy effect that you get with dandelions. Okay, so we'll just heat that very quickly with our heat gun. Usual story, do the same to the back as you would to the front. Okay, so you can probably see the shine there of the embossed part. It doesn't matter, I've caught some stems here, but it doesn't matter because it just looks like extra little bits that, as I said, that are floating by. Next step is to actually add some colour. I've got two aqua painters because I play about with one and then the other. Ideally you want one that's reasonably clean, that you can just start to add some water, not too much. You want it to be wet but not absolutely soaking. And then first of all, I'm using Pool Party, so I'm going to pick up some of the ink. See, already I've used the same aqua painter, but this is a light one. I can then, because it's the pale colour, it doesn't matter too much, I can draw it out and keep it. I'm just sort of dabbing it on. Can you see how the ink is finding its own way through the water channels that I've created? It doesn't need to be precise. I am not a watercolourist or a colourer inner. You just want to play about and add colour and slowly build around the image. So if we bring some down here as well, pick up a little bit more ink and dab it on, and you can see it finds its own way around the bazaars. Then the next one, I've got Balmy Blue. This is one of our new ink pads, and I'm finding that if you turn it upside down, put the heel of your hand on, hopefully it will create a nice pool in the lid for you. And again, if we pick that up and add that where we've already been to some extent, and if I bring in the cleaner one, I can bring in a little bit more water and then bring back that ink and just let it float about where it wants to. So it'll find its own channel and let it run. Just keep adding ink and blending it around. So this time I'm going to take some out here. It'll help that all. See, ooh, look at it go. I love watching that. It's really fascinating. Doesn't take much to please me. So I'm spreading around a little bit more water, and I'll come back and add a little bit more balmy blue and let it blend. Then the next colour is a little bit of Highland Heather that I'm going to dab in, and this you definitely want to just let it find its way. Now where you've got some really good embossing is where you want a bit more of the darker colour, because that will then help the images to pop. And I'm squeezing my aqua painter to, ooh, it's gone a little bit too far that time, but we can salvage that with a little bit of kitchen roll, and try not to knock the camera at the same time. And I think I've said to other people when I've shown this, in the UK we have a chef lady who's probably retired now, called Delia Smith, and she used to do a lot of recipes and say, if it looks like scrambled egg, you probably think it's gone wrong, but actually keep going, you're heading in the right direction. And this is a little bit the same. Until it dries, it looks a bit messy. Now the final step is to add some blueberry bushel, and my, isn't that gorgeous blue, she says, sticking her thumb in it. It's really gorgeous, but it's really deep pigment, so you want to just get a little bit of ink and then swirl it around a little bit, and then start to add it and let it blend. And again, come back up here where I've had the flowers that have gone really well. There we go. So we're just going to let that run its course, and you just need now to be patient and let it dry, which is always my problem. I'm not very patient with that sort of thing. But here's one I did a little earlier, and you can see that's drying nicely. It's a little bit crinkly, but what happens next is if you take a piece of champagne foil card that's just slightly bigger, so this original piece was 3 7/8, so I've made this 4 inches square, so it just gives a nice little border. You can stamp on whatever sentiment you want, and then if you use Tombow wet glue, it will hold it all down and take out all the wrinkles. And then again, you need to let it dry. You also need to be careful when you put it on the edge, because you don't want it to spill out onto your foil card, because it's a hell of a job to get it off otherwise. You can do it, but it sort of tarnishes the foil if you're not really careful with it. So be patient with this card. It's not one you'll make in 2 minutes flat. Each stage is 2 minutes flat, but you just have to wait for each stage to be ready to be done. And the final card ends up something like this, which is then my whole piece has been put onto a thick Whisper White base of 5 inches square, and it makes a really wow card. You can upscale it a little bit as well if you want to, and add some Wink of Stella around the edges, or possibly to the black seed heads again to make it pop even more. So that's my card. I hope it's explained how I did it. It's not rocket science, it's really easy, and I hope you'll have a go. If you want more information, you'll be able to find it on my blog at www.stampingscene.blogspot.com.